Where's my other note? Okay. Welcome to Fanning Out, where we dig into our fandom. I am Valerie Gritch, an independent fan studies scholar who wants to share our interests and examine why we feel the way we do about them. Basically, why does that thing matter to you, and why should people care about it? Let's get into it. Our first guest our only guest today is Sarah. Please introduce
Hi.
yourself.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live in London. I like music, I like history, I like cats, and I'm a very silly goose.
And that is why we are such good friends, I think.
Yes. That's my bio, silly goose.
Really good.
Also likes other stuff. Yeah.
So, what do you fan out about?
I fan out about the TV program Time Team.
Which I had never heard of before until I started talking to Sarah about potentially coming on this program. So if you're not in the UK, you also may not know what Time Team is. So can you please explain to us what Time Team is?
Yeah, I mean, it came as a surprise to me that you didn't know it, Val, because you are such an Anglophile. I fully expected you to have heard of it. So Time Team is a TV program that now in its new iteration is actually a web series that's available on YouTube. But it started life as a TV show that would screen every Sunday evening on Channel 4. And it started in the early 90s and ran kind of all the way through into sort of like the mid 2000s. And it is a show about archaeology. And the concept of the show is a archaeological dig is carried out, and it is filmed across 3 days. And they have archaeology teams that are part of Time Team's kind of in-house team, but then they also bring in regional archaeologists from wherever the dig is being conducted. And it is all presented by Tony Robinson, who played Baldric in Blackadder and who is one of my favorite humans in the entire world. So yeah, that is Time Team in a nutshell.
We love him. And how did you become a fan of Time Team?
Um, so obviously you sent me the questions you were going to ask me
Yeah.
ahead of time. It's not necessarily an easy question to answer. Time Team has kind of just always been in my life in one form or another. So it was on TV while I was growing up. I'm 34, so it started being shown on TV, when I was very small. So I probably wasn't watching it at that age. Um, I think I probably watched quite a lot of it on like repeats and stuff, rather than when it was actually being screened at the time. But I probably came back to it and really like reignited my fandom for it during lockdown, when I found that all of the episodes for it had been uploaded to Channel 4's streaming service. And so throughout the pandemic, I watched every single episode that was available on the streaming service, and all the ones that weren't available on the streaming service I pirated elsewhere. And yeah, it reignited the love in it for me. I had also actually a couple of years prior started showing some episodes to a friend, our mutual friend, who I think you're going to have on the show, Mel.
Yes.
When I was living with her, I showed her a couple of episodes because Mel is American and lived in Australia. So I don't know if she'd heard of it or not. She now lives in the UK and had been living in the UK for a couple of years. Um, but yeah, I sort of returned to it later in life. And I just really love it. That's all there is to it.
So I watched a few episodes today ahead of us speaking for the first
Mhm.
time because it is like very strange that A, I hadn't heard of it and I'm such an
Mm.
Anglophile. B, I love Blackadder and I love Tony Robbins.
Mhm.
I've watched other history programs that he was the host of, so
Mhm.
it's really strange that I had never heard of or seen Time Team. And B, as a history nerd myself, or C, um, it just should have crossed my radar at some point,
Yeah, at some point.
or even just the name of it. And I
Mhm.
remember you telling me like Time Team. I'm like, the fuck is that? Um, but it's so delightful, and it's like that nice kind of like comforting pop history, pop science kind of program where you can just put it on and like zone out with it and get like really involved in like, yeah, are they gonna find this little chapel? I don't know. They only got 3 days, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's you so hit the nail on the head when you said delightful. That is exactly a word I would use to describe it. It is just really comforting, really cozy, and yeah, it's history for like the masses. You know, it's an entertainment show primarily, but it's also just really wonderful watching people that are genuine experts in their field at work. And I learned a lot from watching it as well. So yeah, and it's the setup of it is so perfect in that Tony Robinson being the presenter basically is a stand-in for the audience, that he is there in the trenches with the archaeologists posing all the questions that we as an audience would ask, you know, like how can you tell the difference between like Iron Age and Bronze Age pottery? Like, please explain that to me. And yeah, it's just delightful. It's wonderful.
It feels like just very cozy to watch. And like, especially like I can understand why you binged it because I got through 2.5 episodes today. And as I was saying before we started, like I can see myself watching more of it because it's very much up my alley. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, yeah, you just like a little hug of media and you just want to like binge it and stay with Tony and have him like tell you all the things with the historians and the archaeologists.
Yeah. And the obviously it's, you know, it's a factual program, so all the people in it are real people, but if you watch the series throughout, you kind of come to love the people in it like they are characters in a TV show, you know, and like they have sort of their own unique dynamics between all of that. I'm kind of going to call them cast members because, you know, like they're not, they are real people, but there are people that you sort of like over time learn will like bicker, and it's all very good natured, but you know there's the guy that does there's a thing called a geophysical survey, which is where you have this big apparatus and you arrive at a site and you need to get a picture of like what's underneath the ground basically. um are you getting weird audio feedback or was that just me?
No, you're good.
Okay, I just heard my own voice go picture, 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 picture. It was really strange. Anyway, yeah, so they have, you know, the guy that does the geophysical survey, and he'll do that so they can assess because they turn up in a field, and you know they have like an inkling that there's something interesting under the ground in this field, but they need to know where to put the trenches so that they can access the features underground and where's going to yield, you know, the most interesting kind of stuff for them to look at. And ultimately, they go in with a question that they need to answer. So it's like, where do we put this trench so that we can answer the questions that we want to answer? But there's always like a slight disagreement between like the archaeologists. There's this like underlying tension between the archaeologists and the like the geophysicist guy, where they'll be like, well, no, and they'll be looking at the printouts and be like, no, 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 I completely disagree with you. That's not a wall. That's just like some granite or something, and they'll argue about it, but it's like really endearing and delightful and well-meaning, and it's like watching siblings. There's a real family feel, I think, to all of the people, because also it was a really long running program, so these people genuinely spent a very, very long time in each other's company in some, well, we were talking about this before we started, but um in often very challenging conditions.
Yeah.
So we were talking before we sort of started recording. You said every single episode you'd watched so far, it had been raining. So, you know, these are people who are digging in the mud, you know, looking for tiny pieces of pottery in really unforgiving conditions. And I think it's really apparent watching it how much they all kind of bond as people. And it was also, I think it was like behind the scenes, it was quite a small sort of crew. Like they probably only had like a couple of camera people, and sometimes you'll see like the boom operator in the shot. It's quite kind of, you know, they don't try and make it too polished. So yeah, that it's all part of the appeal, that you sort of feel like you're in the field with them and you're getting cold and wet with them while they're there, you know, trying to find medieval coins or or pieces of Roman tesserae floor. You know, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a good time. I could talk about it a lot, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. One of the episodes I watched, they were it was pissing down rain for multiple,
Mm,
like they were stepping and the ground was squelching water
yeah,
back up that
yeah.
level. And they found the tiniest little Iron Age bead and
Mm,
they were so overjoyed. And it was so like heartwarming to watch these, grown adults
Yeah.
get so giddy over
Mm,
it. They're cleaning it off, they're licking it, they're
mm,
all the little like field tests they have to figure out like, oh
mhm.
no, that's glass, it's not stone, you
Yeah.
know, it's from this period. Um, and you can really tell the bond that's between them because no one's like, calm down.
Yeah.
They're all at the same level of hype about their finds and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. It's the shared joy. Like no one's there kind of looking at them getting ridiculously excited over this tiny bone fragment and being like, "Come on, you've seen 50 of those before." Like they all I don't know, and I don't know if this is something that's unique to the program or to like if all sort of archaeologists are like this. I have watched other archaeology programs, so it's like not unique. I've watched quite a lot of things about archaeologists, but yeah, seeing the like the joy and excitement of them kind of discovering things, and I guess also a big part of the joy in some episodes this is like more a feature than others, but sometimes they'll be touching an object and they'll kind of say, I'm the first person to touch this for 2000 years or something. And I think, yeah, I think everybody that's on that program and the way the program is made, they're also very good at um, making you understand that history is about people and connecting it back to the people. And it's about who were the people that lived here. Like that's what we're here to find out. Who lived here? What were their lives like? What did they eat? Like, how did they spend their time? How did they make things they needed? How did they survive? What did the dwellings that they lived in look like? And yeah, I think I'm a person that enjoys like figuring out puzzles, and it's basically just a bunch of people in a field going, let's figure out some puzzles together. Yeah.
I love it. So you mentioned one way that you fan out about Time Team is rewatching it. Um,
Mm.
is there any other way that your fandom, your love for Time Team manifests itself? Like, have you tried to like collect things? Have you visited any archaeological sites? Maybe not from the show, but
Mhm.
from like other places in the world, and you thought of it, things like that.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of ways that it has kind of spread into other areas of my life. So, because that was my kind of entry into understanding what archaeology was, or I grew up in a place with it's a very rural place and it has a very very interesting history. And because it's very sparsely populated, there's a lot of untouched ancient sites that are very. I grew up in a place where kind of ancient archaeology and stuff was right there next to like modern day life. A bit like living in Rome, where you're kind of like in a modern day cafe or something, and you've got ancient ruins in the background. Where I grew up was very much like that. You'd be in a village and the public toilet is here, and then next to it is an ancient Viking burial ground that's where King Ori, the Viking king, was buried. Like they're right next to each other.
Bonkers.
And I spent all of my childhood being taken to museums that were filled with, like flint arrowheads and stuff. So I was always kind of really obsessed with that, which Time Team then fed. And now as an adult, I live in a city, but you can still, as a person, experience archaeology in that city by literally walking down onto the foreshore of the River Thames. And now I should have a caveat here that you can, anybody is allowed to walk on the foreshore of the River Thames, but technically speaking, you need something, you need a permit from the Port of London Authority to like touch or interfere with the foreshore or remove anything from the foreshore. So I'm just going to caveat that don't go mucking around on the Thames foreshore. But there's a thing called mudlarking, which are people who, it's basically a form of amateur archaeology where people go down onto riverbanks and find interesting things on the riverbanks. So that's something that I've become very interested in my adult life. And I quite often, if I'm in London and the tide is low, I'll just go down onto the foreshore and have a look. And like I said, I don't have a permit from said authority, so I've definitely never taken anything from the foreshore. But you get to see lots of really interesting stuff when you're down there. And obviously London is a city with like thousands of years of human occupation. So, you know, I now just by sight, I'm like, oh, that's a medieval ceiling tile, because I can see there's like a dark band in the middle where the kiln hasn't fully cooked it all the way through because their kilns weren't hot enough then to like fully, you know, and you like start to identify things, some of which I learned from watching Time Team. And then quite a few of the people that were on Time Team have gone on to have kind of like careers in media around history and like social sciences and stuff. So there's a broadcaster called Alice Roberts, whose kind of broadcasting career started as an archaeologist, like a young archaeologist on Time Team. And she now makes her own archaeology programs and she writes books. And I've read a bunch of her books. And I bumped into her once at Glastonbury.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's yeah, and I really fangirled on her. And I mean, it was badly timed because she was literally about to eat a burrito and I spotted her and I was quite young. I think now I would be a bit more respectful and sort of go like, love your work, and then walk off. But I basically just went, oh my God, I love you so much. I watched Time Team. I read it, and I just finished reading her book as well. So I was like, I love it. And she was very gracious, but I think I was a bit insane. But it was fine. And I also once, and this is genuinely the most starstruck I have ever been in my entire life. I walked, and I'm not even going to say walked past, because here is what happened. I was walking in London with somebody, and I saw Tony Robinson across the street walking his dog, and I went purple in the face and was shaking and said, oh, and the person I was with, I was like, oh my God, that's Tony Robinson. And I literally was shaking and said, that's Tony Robinson. And he went, oh, well, just, you know, you could say hi. And I think I verbatim, I'm not joking, I think I verbatim said to him, I can't let Tony see me like this. Because I was so, you know, because I love Time Team, but I also really grew up on Blackadder. So I just was like, I don't think I can be normal around him. So I'm just going to do, and we literally walked like the opposite way around and then walked a big loop around to avoid bumping into him, because I just could not be normal. I probably would have cried. That's how much I love Tony Robinson. I would have burst into tears and it would have been very awkward for everybody involved. So I just did.
The response though to a random Tony Robinson encounter, because
I think so too.
I feel that way about Blackadder. I grew up watching, because we're roughly the same age, and I think that's just the correct response to a surprise Tony Robinson.
I wonder how many times a day Tony Robinson makes people cry just because of his national treasure status. I think it just probably makes people emotional around him. But yeah, I could not. So I just, you know, I just backed away. And I think that kind of answers that question. I don't think I've intentionally visited any of the places that the show visited, although to be honest, they did so many series I may have done and just kind of not remembered that they'd been there before. But it definitely has made me kind of more I'm changing tactics. One thing I have still to this day not done in my entire life that is on my bucket list is I have never quite managed to volunteer on an archaeological dig, and it's like a lifelong ambition, and I have attempted it a couple of times and I've never quite kind of managed to. I've never managed to sort of make it work out. But yeah, at some point in my life I will, and I will probably spend 12 hours sieving tiny little things of dust to find one tiny pottery shard, and it will still probably be the greatest day of my life. So yeah,
not a doubt. I think especially because it's something that you grew up with, that you have like so many, like 30 years of meaning in and how can that not be such a powerful moment?
Yeah. And I think it's funny because even though all of the people that were on Time Team were, you know, legit archaeologists and what they were doing was legit, the way it was set up and framed for the show, which is, you know, it's a catchphrase that they basically say at the start of every episode of, you know, they set up, there's this site here. We suspect that there's something here. This is what we're going to attempt. And we've only got 3 days to find out. That's like the whole premise is it's a 3-day dig. Now, in reality, I know archaeological digs don't take 3 days. I know it's like months or years even of work. So I think it would be funny. I feel like if you turned up at an like a real archaeological dig and told people you were a fan of Time Team, it would potentially be met with like mixed responses of maybe some people kind of rolling their eyes being like, it's not really like Time Team, right? But then also I think a lot of people that are archaeologists today probably became archaeologists because they watched Time Team growing up.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it might be a kind of like a popular entertainment program, but there's kind of like real skill and real education and stuff that has happened as a result of it. So
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because when you first told me about it, I thought it was maybe a children's program, but it absolutely isn't. Like it could be like
yeah,
appropriate for children to watch, absolutely, but it's
yeah,
like dumbed down at all.
no,
Which I really
no,
appreciate. Like
yeah,
you're getting it straight from the historian, it's straight from the archaeologists,
yeah,
mediated slightly by Tony, you
yeah,
know, using lay terms and whatnot.
yes, yeah,
Um, they're not speaking down to their audience, which I really appreciate.
exactly. Yeah, and it's funny actually that you said sort of Tony's using lay terms. I think that dynamic, by the end of it, he'd been presenting that program for 13 years or whatever, or even more than that. He kind of knew quite a lot by that stage. So it's sort of funny then at seeing him interact with them where he's, I guess, still having to kind of be the everyman and ask those kind of questions, but also I think he ended up knowing quite a lot.
Yeah,
So he sort of became like a bit of an amateur expert himself.
yeah,
Um, and that, like I said, that then contributes even more to the kind of like the rapport that they have with one another, where he would then start kind of pitching his opinion on what he thought something would be based on the fact that he had spent enough time on the program that he had a general understanding of like historic periods and stuff. And he might be like, oh, I don't know, that looks Saxon to me, like
yeah.
it's yeah, so
That's so fun. I love it.
mm,
And the episodes I was watching were later seasons as well, where I was
mm-hmm,
seeing like some of that coming through. Um,
mm-hmm,
where he was bantering quite a lot with everybody and
mm-hmm,
like giving them kind of a hard time. Like
yeah,
the thing we're digging up is we think it's a Brock, and if it's a Brock, then it looks like this and it has these qualities. And
yeah,
from the trenches we've dug, it shows XYZ. And can we say it's a Brock? And the historians are like,
mm,
oh, grumble, grumble. We're not confident enough yet. And he's like,
yeah. Yeah, he does like to do that where they'll be they'll have dug like half a trench and he'll be like, so do we know if it's Anglo-Saxon yet? And they're like, Tony, give us a fucking minute, yeah, we've only just started digging. But yeah, it's all good natured. And I think just especially it's particularly at this moment in time, and maybe more so for someone who's sitting in the country that you're in, more so than the country I'm in, although we're not perfect either. But um watching experts talk about things that they are knowledgeable about is like in a world that has become so anti-intellectualism, it's
yeah,
really wonderful to
bottom
watch something
the
that
soul.
yeah, it's just really wonderful to watch a program that is just a bunch of people who are really intelligent and educated, and also just like really enthusiastic about what they do and really love what they do, and all have very strong opinions about their work, but also sort of respect each other, and their varying opinions, and they sort of healthily, maybe sometimes like a little bit spicy, but they'll still healthily debate their varying ideas with each other. And yeah, it's just a really good time. I feel like I just keep coming back to saying that, but it is just
No,
an absolute joy to watch, and I love it, and I can't get enough of it.
it is a really good time. It can't be said enough. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's nothing wrong with repeating that because it brings you that joy, it brings you that comfort. And
Mm-hmm.
especially like you mentioned in our current age where there is such an anti-intellectual movement. Um, people don't want to sit there and be quote unquote lectured to. They don't
Mm,
want to expand their horizons. They want to
mm,
think what they want to think. I think it's really important to sit down and listen to some experts on something.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we already touched on this a bit. I was going to ask you what makes it different from other interests you have, but like I said, we already touched on that a bit.
Yeah. I guess it's it's different from other interests I have in the so I kind of mentioned at the start that the program in the iteration that we're talking about stopped broadcasting quite a long time ago, so it hasn't been on TV and there haven't been any kind of new episodes apart from a couple of one-off specials for quite a long time. um it has now come back in a different format, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later. But I think because it's something that is a TV show that was on quite a long time ago, it's quite a niche interest. So unlike other things that I enjoy, like music and other stuff, you can kind of find a person to talk to about it quite a lot. But I think that makes it kind of all the more special when you meet someone that also really loves Time Team, because you have a little bonding moment over it where you're like, oh my god, remember the crazy episode where they were in a cave and the cave kept collapsing on them and they were finding skulls everywhere? And they'll be like, oh my god, I remember that one. And then you kind of go off down a little rabbit hole together, and it's very nice. Um, but yeah, not a lot of people, when I mention it, a lot of people know of it and maybe will have seen a few, but when you meet someone that really loves it, it's a lot of fun to then start going, oh, do you remember this one? Oh, do you remember this one? And then you get into a little, yeah. So yeah, it's different from my other interests because it's quite specific.
No, I get that entirely because, and I brought this up when I was with you last week. Uh,
Mm.
One of my favorite television shows is Red Dwarf, which is a British sci-fi comedy for those
Mm.
familiar with it. And I grew up watching that on PBS. And it was a weekly like British comedy hour or
Mm.
evening. And it was one of many shows that was shown. And nobody in the US really knows it that's my age. So
Yeah.
when I do find the one person, as usually a Brit, who is as intense about it as I am, because like you said,
Mm.
people are familiar with it, especially in
Yeah.
the UK. But no one might have the same intensity and fervor that I have for it. So when I do
Yeah.
find that, I'm like, oh my God, we're best friends forever now. We're
Mhm.
bonded. And they're just like, okay. But like, it's a beautiful moment when you get to find that niche
Moment.
bonding person in your life.
Yeah, it's a beautiful moment when you can talk about Phil Harding, the archaeologist's tiny denim booty shorts, and someone knows what you mean. And for the benefit of the viewer, I will explain. There is an archaeologist on the show called Phil Harding who I would recommend, after you listen to this episode, that you YouTube just like a supercut of his best moments. He's got an absolutely incredible West Country accent, which I'm guessing quite a lot of people that watch this are going to be American, but it's basically like if you thought of what a scarecrow talking sounded like, that's what a West Country accent sounds like. Or if you've seen Hot Fuzz, how the people in Hot Fuzz talk is how Phil Harding talks. I'm guessing quite a lot of people that watch this probably know what Hot Fuzz is, but and he's a legend. He's wonderful. And in some episodes, he wears, and he's, like a rugged middle-aged man that spends a lot of his time in fields covered in mud, and he wears like big boots and a big plaid shirt. But in the summer episodes, he wears these micro denim cut-off shorts that he's quite clearly cut from an old pair of jeans that got a hole in it, and they are so tiny. Yeah, it's really funny. And if I say that to someone and then I know what I mean, then I know that we're on the same wavelength as each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Spider-Man meme where you're pointing
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Yeah. Over Phil Harding's denim micro shorts.
So you mentioned that it's come back as a digital endeavor now. Um,
Yeah.
have you been tuning in to the new episodes every now and then?
So I will confess, when I heard that it had sort of come back as like a YouTube sort of format, I had the same reaction probably someone would have about their favorite film getting remade, where I
Mhm.
was a bit like, oh, it won't be the same. And it wasn't the same kind of like Tony Robinson. I looked it up, and like Tony Robinson wasn't involved because it was um basically like a fan funded thing, which I think is really wonderful.
Yeah.
And it proves that obviously there are a lot of people out there that really loved it when it was on TV. So yeah, I kind of was a bit about it. But I think it sort of gained a bit more traction. And the other day, I think it was actually sort of like reported on the news that, Time Team's back, and it's still online as a web series, but I think they have probably a bigger budget now and it's getting a bigger audience. So I am now going to go and watch some episodes, and I'm sure I will love it. But I just sort of
Yeah.
had this fear that it wouldn't be the same. And I didn't want to watch it in
Very
case it
valid
wasn't the
fear
same.
though.
But yeah, I am now going to watch it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think that it's really interesting that it's um a fan funded endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting ads while I was watching Time Team today, or
Mm-hmm.
little pop-ups throughout the episode that
Yeah.
was saying like join our community on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to have X amount of fans by this year. Um
Yeah.
and like they're in the thousands of tens of thousands, which is incredible.
Yeah. So I will admit, I spent probably during lockdown, actually, because, let's face it, we all had quite a lot of time on our hands. I spent quite a long time in lockdown on eBay trying to buy an authentic Time Team crew t-shirt from the show. Because when they did digs, they often would get local volunteers to come and they would give them a shirt, it's like a souvenir. I spent a very long time trying to buy a Time Team t-shirt and never successfully found one. And when I was looking up the new sort of Time Team series the other day, they have launched a merch line. So yeah, I've never put a t-shirt in my cart faster. So yeah, sadly it didn't arrive in time to wear for the episode, but I am supporting the new series of Time Team by buying their merch. And yeah, I will be checking it out.
You're going to be decked out. It's going to be great. And that'll help you find other people in the wild easier. They'll be able to spot you.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that was a little part of my brain when I wanted to buy it. Although it was lockdown, we weren't really going outside. But I was like, it will be a bat signal to other Time Team fans if I'm wearing a Time Team t-shirt. It'll be a conversation piece. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going outside in it and having people notice it and talk to me about Time Team. Hopefully, it's basically like having it's like having a sign that just says "Talk to me about Time Team."
Please ask me about my niche interests.
Yeah. Ask me about Phil Harding shorts.
So we touched on this again a little bit, but is there any specific reason that we haven't touched on that our listeners should look up Time Team?
You should watch Time Team if you enjoy watching people work together to achieve a common goal. If you like history, if you like different British regional accents, this will also be your jam because there's a lot of them. And yeah, I mean, it's just a really like joyful, cozy, nice thing to watch. And if you like Tony Robinson, yeah, it's just, I keep saying it, it's just a really good time. It's just a good thing. I think everyone should watch it.
Ticks all the boxes.
Ticks every box. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners about either Time Team, about television fandom, about history fandom, anything that it means to you?
I mean, it's a very broad question.
Is
Can I tell you my favorite ever episode of Time Team? And this is quite biased. And also it's a massive spoiler. So, I'm basically going to tell people about this episode. But it's biased because the episode was filmed in the place that I'm from. So it was also really special to get to see a bunch, like the team of archaeologists talking about a period and a place of history that I'm really familiar with because
Right.
it's where I grew up. And it is also memorable because so they were digging up a mound and they found this thing called I can't remember if it's pronounced kist or cyst. I think it's kist. It might be cyst. It's a kind of burial, an early burial, where they would basically dig a grave and line the grave with stone, and then they would lay the body in the stone lined sort of grave with like a shroud wrapped around it, and then they would put a stone lid over it. So it's basically kind of like they would build a coffin out of stones and then they would bury it again. And it's a particular kind of funerary practice that's associated with a particular place and time and culture. But this one had been so perfectly preserved. It was, you know, I can't remember how old it is now, and I don't want to be wrong, but I'm going to say it was like 1,000-ish years, probably not that many. It was a very, very old burial. But the stones had been laid so perfectly that not much air had got into the burial. And often with burials like that as well, the stones will give way and soil will come in and kind of crush the body, and it will affect the condition. They lifted the lid of this kist, can't remember how it's pronounced, and it was a skeleton laid out. And as they were examining the skeleton, they realized there was hair remaining from this really ancient burial. And you could see that the hair was auburn, and you could see it had been plaited. Wow. And it had been laid over the person's shoulder and plaited.
Yeah.
And all of the archaeologists, I think it's one of the only episodes I've seen where the archaeologists were all in tears, because it was so moving to them, because it was so unbelievably rare to find a burial that old where there was still hair. And, you know, and they have at all of the digs, they will have like an artist that works at the dig that will then do kind of an artist's interpretation of what, you know, the settlements might have looked like or what the people might have looked like. And he did this painting of what the person's body may have looked like, and he painted sort of the braid. But I think it kind of brings it back to what I was talking to before about how history is just about people. Yeah. And you got such a sense of the fact that this history they were looking at was a person, and someone braided that person's hair. Someone loved that person enough that when they were dead, they prepared their body for death, and they plaited their hair for them, and they laid them out really carefully. And yeah, it was just, it like, I've shown that episode to so many people, and most of the people I've shown it to have cried at that moment as well. So yeah, that's my favorite episode. And it's also extra special because it's in the place that I grew up, which is a very, you know, like small place. So to see it on TV is always exciting, because, you know, it's a bit like, it would be like seeing your street on TV.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really special episode, and that's why it's my favorite.
No, that's amazing. I think that's a perfect episode to have as your favorite, because that's so rare in so many different ways.
Yeah. If people want to find it, I can't remember what series it's from. I think it might be one of the ones that you have to find on YouTube, but it's called Finds on the Fairway because it was on a golf course. So they literally had to dig up a golf course to access this burial site. But yeah, Finds on the Fairway. It is, I think, the best episode, in my very biased opinion, but I think it's the best episode of Time Team.
Well, I can't wait to look it up and cry later.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it after this, I think. I'm just going to pull it up and watch it for like the 15th time.
Me crying.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
You're welcome.
Yes. And please look up Time Team and get a cozy little historical hug from television the way that we have.